You know, sometimes the most incredible stories are hidden in the most ordinary things. Take the tamarind tree. You've probably had its fruit in something delicious, like pad thai or a chutney. But for all its uses, this tree has a darker side, a pretty serious reputation for being haunted. So how on earth did one tree end up being both a beloved ingredient and a home for ghosts? Well, that's what we're here to figure out.
And this is the core puzzle, right? On the one hand, you've got this incredibly useful tree. People have been using it for food and medicine for ages. But on the other hand, all across South Asia and even in the Caribbean, it's the tree that people warn you about. Don't sleep under the tamarind, they say. It's this place where spirits are supposed to hang out. It's a tree of life and a tree of death all at once.
So that's the big question we're tackling today. How did this happen? How does a single, perfectly useful tree get this kind of split personality? We're going to play detective and follow the clues to find out.
Okay, so our investigation starts with our first clue, the tree itself. I mean, sometimes the simplest explanation is the best place to begin. A ghost story often needs a spooky stage, and it turns out the tamarind tree builds its own.
Okay, so what's so special about this tree? Well, first off, its branches create this incredibly dense shade. It's great during a hot day, but as dusk sets in, that deep, dark shadow can feel a little unsettling. Then there's the ground underneath. The leaves are so acidic that often nothing else can grow there. You just get this weirdly perfect, barren circle of dirt. And on top of all that, there's a traditional belief that the tree gives off some kind of unsafe gas at night. So you put it all together, and you've got the perfect recipe for a creepy atmosphere. But let's be real. Is a spooky vibe really enough? I mean, a creepy tree is one thing, but a full-blown haunted reputation that lasts for generations? That feels like it needs a little something more than just some shade and soil chemistry, you know? And this is where the story takes a much, much darker turn. Our second clue isn't about the tree's biology, but about its history. It's about what the tree has witnessed. Because sometimes a plant isn't just a plant, it's a silent witness.
So, we need to go back in time. We're going to northern India, to a region called Uttar Pradesh, and the year is 1857. This was the peak of the Indian rebellion against British rule.
In a town there, a particular tamarind tree, known to locals as Bawani Emli, was co-opted by British forces for a pretty horrific purpose. They turned it into a makeshift gallows to execute Indian rebels.
And this wasn't a one-time thing. From the branches of this single tree, in a single day, 52 freedom fighters were hanged.
You can just imagine how an event like that completely changes a place. The tree stopped being just a tree. It was transformed. It became a memorial, soaked in grief and trauma. And the local belief to this day is that the restless spirits of those martyrs are still attached to it, forever haunting the spot where they died. But you know, even a story that tragic needs the right kind of cultural soil to really take root and grow into a legend. And that brings us to our third clue, which takes us deep into the folklore of South Asia, where the idea of spirits living in trees is nothing new. It's ancient. And to really get this, you have to understand a specific type of spirit, the Bhuta. Now, this isn't your average ghost. A Bhuta is specifically the spirit of someone who died a violent or unnatural death, or maybe didn't get the proper funeral rites. They're seen as being trapped between worlds, and they often take shelter in these in-between or liminal spaces, like trees. This idea provides the perfect story structure for what happened at Bawani Emli. And this whole idea of tree spirits is just woven into the fabric of the culture. You can find it in ancient Sanskrit texts talking about beings called yakshas that live in trees. You hear it today in warnings passed down through families, specifically about tamarind trees. And what's wild is that this belief traveled. In the Caribbean, you find the exact same folklore about tamarinds being haunted, but there, the spirits are called jumbies. So the cultural framework was already there, just waiting for a story. All right, so we've got our clues, right? We've got the eerie environment, the traumatic history, and these ancient cultural beliefs. So now, let's put the puzzle together and see how a tree actually becomes haunted. So here's the recipe. First, you start with the tree's natural creepiness, the dark shade, the barren earth. That sets the stage. Then you layer on a truly horrific historical event, like a mass execution, which forever links that specific tree to violent death. And finally, you drop that story into a culture that already has a deep-seated belief in restless spirits or bhutas that like to live in trees. See, it's not any single thing. It's the combination, the layering of ecology, history, and folklore
that creates a legend so powerful it's still being told today.
So, it's a great story, but why does it actually matter? What can a ghost story about a tree really teach us about the world? Turns out, quite a lot.
There's this quote from our source material that just absolutely nails it. These beliefs aren't just silly superstitions. They're actually cultural tools. They're smart, complex systems for managing how people interact with the world around them.
Just think about it for a second. A scary story about ghosts in a tamarind tree is a very, very effective way to tell people, hey, maybe don't sleep outside by yourself. It could be dangerous, right? Or by making a tree either sacred or feared, you're protecting it from being cut down, which helps preserve the environment. And maybe most powerfully, like we saw with the Bawani Emily tree, these stories become a kind of living archive, a way to pass down historical memory and moral lessons from one generation to the next.
So the Haunted Tamarind isn't just a spooky tale. It's a story about how we remember our history, how we relate to our environment, and how culture gives meaning to the world, all wrapped up into one. And it kind of leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? What stories are encoded in the landscape right where you live? What do the trees in your neighborhood remember?